So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
The Detroit Lions have a problem this week. It is a great problem to have, and it's a problem that most NFL teams wish they had to face on a weekly basis, but it is an impactful problem nonetheless. That problem is, who should the Detroit Lions start at safety this week, going in to the Dallas Cowboys home stadium and looking to walk away as the number 2 seed in the NFC and potentially as a legitimate Super Bowl contender. The Detroit Lions have 4 options. They have 4 players at the safety position that have earned snaps, have earned time, and have earned the right to be on the field and be impactful for this Detroit Lions defense. Those players are second-year safety Kirby Joseph, who has 4 interceptions on the year and is coming off of a great game against Minnesota to clinch an NFC North championship for the Lions. Ifeatu Melifonwu, who over the last 3 weeks has played like an elite safety across the NFL and has been one of the best playmakers and best safeties in the league over the last 3 games. CJ Gardner-Johnson, the prized free agent acquisition, who was having a great year before injury struck, and rookie sensation Brian Branch, a player that from the slot and from being a slot cornerback / safety has been arguably the best defensive back rookie in the NFL and is already arguably a top 5 slot defender in the league. Now, it is unlikely that all 4 players can play for the Detroit Lions at the safety position, as likely they will only play 2 or 3 guys at a time. So who should the Detroit Lions be playing at safety? Who should be starting? Who should be backing up? How should snap splits work? And who should have the opportunity to play on Aaron Glenn's defense? Today, we're going to take a look at it. Starting off with the easy option, Brian Branch. Brian Branch should stick with the slot cornerback position. He is already a top 5 slot defender in all of football. As a rookie already with 2 games remaining, Brian Branch has totaled 69 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hits, 1 quarterback sack, 1 forced fumble, 3 interceptions, and 10 passes defended. He has played like an elite rookie from day one. He was great week 1 versus Kansas City. He has single-handedly taken over multiple games at a time. He was fantastic versus the Atlanta Falcons in week 3. He was fantastic against New Orleans. He was great against Chicago the first time around. He has been a true rookie sensation. And honestly, I think there's a reality that he starts seeing all pro nods as soon as next season because he has been that dominant and that elite as a slot cornerback. So there's no reason, it doesn't make sense for to move him to safety. It doesn't make sense to take him away from the slot. He is an elite slot player, and he should be able to stay there and continue to make plays for the Detroit Lions and have that spot for the Detroit Lions shirt up for the foreseeable future. So that leaves us with 3 options. Do you put Kirby Joseph in? Do you put Ifeatu Melifonwu in? Or do you put CJ Gardner-Johnson back in his starting role? Well, Aaron Glenn likes to use his safeties in a lot of different ways. The safeties in an Aaron Glenn defense are very much wild card players. They are not going to line up in one spot every single play and do the same things. His safeties play in the box some snaps. They play in the boundary some snaps. They play deep right half of the field. They play the deep left half of the field. They switch sides. They switch roles on the fly in between plays. It does not matter. Aaron Glenn's safeties play several different roles, and it has been shown time and time again that Aaron Glenn will use his safeties pretty much in every way that he could possibly imagine. There will be a play where Kirby Joseph will be in the box and Ifeatu Melifonwu will be the deep safety, and the very next play, Ifeatu will be in the box and Kirby will be deep, or one of them will be on the boundary, or one of them will be in the slot, or one of them will be blitzing off of the defensive line. Like, there are so many different ways that Aaron Glenn likes to use his safeties. There are times where he uses 2. There are times where he uses 3, including Brian Branch. There are times where he uses 4 safeties on the play. He has I think safety is the position that Aaron Glenn likes to utilize the most, which is why I think all of these guys will play, but I don't think all of them will have the same amount of playing time or the same impact. Taking a look at Kirby Joseph first, Kirby Joseph on the season has totaled 71 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 10 passes defended, and 4 interceptions. Last week versus the Minnesota Vikings, he came away with 2 interceptions off of Nick Mullins, and a big part of why the Detroit Lions were able to make some defensive stands and able to turn and flip the script on its head, earning them an NFC North title. Kirby Joseph has been fantastic this year. He's had some up and down play for sure, had a little bit of a sophomore slump, but especially over the last 2 games has seemingly been able to get back to that Kirby Joseph rookie form where he was picking off Aaron Rodgers, where he was becoming an elite ball hawk, an elite playmaker. And Kirby Joseph, despite having some issues for sure, despite having kind of, again, a rookie or a sophomore slump, Kirby Joseph has seemingly turned it around the last 2 weeks. He has been phenomenal against Denver and was great against Minnesota. And I think it's really hard to say that you should take that guy off the field, especially being a second-year star. Now, CJ Gardner-Johnson is the tough one because he's only played 2 games and really has only played 1 healthy game for the Detroit Lions, that being week 1 versus Kansas City. Now, over the 2 games, CJ Gardner-Johnson had 2 passes defended and 13 tackles, but really playing a game and a half and really playing an entire game with a torn pectoral. Now, CJ Gardner-Johnson is the prized free agent possession. He's the guy that everybody thought would come in and change this defense and make it an elite one, and it turn this defensive philosophy around. And unfortunately, in week 2, he did tear his pectoral and has not been able to play in the last 16 weeks of the NFL season. But he is expected to return this week versus Dallas and bring that swagger back to the defense, bring the playmaking ability, bring the solid, the strong starting safety, starting slot cornerback that a lot of Lions fans were hoping he would be. And hopefully he will become the playmaker that the Lions wanted him to be and the playmaker he has been throughout the remainder of his NFL career. And then you have the guy that makes it all work. You have Ifeatu Melifonwu, a player that has almost single-handedly fixed the defense over the last month, as Ifeatu Melifonwu was coming off of his 3rd straight start, totaling 25 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits, 3 quarterback sacks, 5 passes defended, 1 forced fumble, and 1 interception. Ifeatu Melifonwu over the last month, over the last 3 games, has played like an all-pro safety. He has played like a defensive player of the year candidate. He has played like the best safety in football, and I don't think there's a way, I don't think there's a reality, I don't think you can take Ifeatu Melifonwu off the field based on the play that he has been showing you. He has been the best player on the Lions defense over the last 3 games. He is a guy that has shored up the entire defense. He is a guy that is a wild card on the Aaron Glenn defense, playing slot cornerback, playing box safety, playing deep middle fielding safety. He can play the post position. He can play the box safety. He can pretty much do everything that you want from your safety, everything you want from a defensive back. So how do you take him off the field? How do you take Kirby Joseph off the field? How do you not play CJ Gardner-Johnson? How do you not play rookie sensation Brian Branch? How do you play all of them at the same time and have them actually work as a cohesive defense and put your best secondary on the field? Well, I think the simple answer is you rotate and you play all 3 of them. I think there are going to be snaps where it's going to be Ifeatu Melifonwu and CJ Gardner-Johnson, whether one be in the slot or one be at the boundary, whether one be deep and one be in the box or both be deep at the same time. I think there are going to be snaps where Ifeatu and CJ Gardner-Johnson are on the field. I think there are going to be snaps like last week and a lot of last week where Kirby Joseph and Ifeatu Melifonwu are the deep safeties. I think there's going to be plays where CJ Gardner-Johnson and CJ Gardner-Johnson and Kirby Joseph are going to be the deep players, and Ifeatu might be in the slot. Ifeatu might be in the box. Ifeatu, I think, could potentially even play on the boundary as a boundary cornerback opposite of Cam Sutton. But I think that they're going to find a way to play all 3 safeties at the same time and potentially play all 4 guys at the same time, including Brian Branch, of course, being that slot cornerback. But there is ways to do this. There is ways to get guys on the field. Aaron Glenn over the last couple of years has loved to play with 3 safeties on the field at a time. So I do think that all 3 safeties will play. Recently, because of depth issues, because of injury issues, they've played a lot more 2 safeties. They've played a lot more with just Kirby and Ifeatu, and they've kind of let Tracy Walker fall to the wayside, even though he hasn't been completely irrelevant in this defense either. But I do think there is a realm, and I do think there is a possibility where all 4 players play, where you line up and you potentially start the game with CJ Gardner-Johnson and Kirby Joseph as your deep safeties, with Ifeatu Melifonwu kind of being the robber over the middle, or potentially even just playing kind of as a sub linebacker, with, of course, Brian Branch playing in the slot. I think there's a opportunity for Ifeatu Melifonwu to show what he can do on the boundary. He's been elite for the Detroit Lions in the box. He's been elite for the Detroit Lions in the air. So he probably can play the boundary because that's the position he was actually drafted to play, and that was the position he played at the University of Syracuse. As far as snaps, as far as percentage of play time, I think they're going to bring in CJ Gardner-Johnson a little bit slow. I think they were cautious with him last week, and I think he will be impactful. I think he will hit the ground running and play 60 to 70% of snaps. But I do think that until Ifeatu Melifonwu, until Kirby Joseph actually prove that they have lost their spot, they have lost time on the safety position, I think it's going to be really hard to justify benching one of them to play a guy that hasn't played in 16 weeks. I think it's going to be hard to justify shaking up the secondary and shaking up the defense when the defense overall has been pretty good. And even though the secondary gave up a lot of yards last week, they really were able to take the football away 4 times. And without Justin Jefferson making some absolutely superhero-esque catches, the secondary performance isn't nearly as bad as it looks on the stat sheet. So here's my projected secondary for week 17. Cam Sutton is your CB1. Ifeatu Melifonwu as your cornerback 2, while rotating in at safety, while rotating as the boundary, the box safety, whatever you have to do. Brian Branch playing almost exclusively in the slot, but also could potentially be rotating around. Kirby Joseph is safety 1, CJ Gardner-Johnson as safety 2. I think that puts the 5 most talented secondary members on the field in positions that they are not going to be liabilities, in situations that they can be comfortable in, situations that they can impact the game. And I think that you rotate them around. Right. Aaron Glenn, as I mentioned earlier, loves to move his safeties. I think that Ifeatu is going to see time at safety. I think Brian Branch is going to see time at safety. I think Kirby Joseph, CJ Gardner-Johnson are all going to play safety roles. Cam Sutton is going to stay on the boundary and sometimes shift into the slot. You're going to see potentially CJ Gardner-Johnson on the boundary or Kirby Joseph on the boundary. But your 5 best secondary members, your 5 best players from the Detroit Lions secondary are Cam Sutton, Ifeatu Melifonwu, Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, and CJ Gardner-Johnson. I think they're going to be the 5 players to take the field and start the game for the Detroit Lions. And wherever they play on the field, whatever position they're asked to play on any given down, I think those are the 5 secondary players that should see the most snaps and should be the most impactful for the Detroit Lions. So with all that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Let me know down in the comments below how you feel about you maybe moving Ifeatu to cornerback for a couple of games, how you feel about this rotation, who you think should see more snaps, and who you think should potentially see less snaps going into the Dallas Cowboys game. I'm very curious what you guys have to say. With all that being said, that is all for you guys right now. Thank you all so very much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions.